When it comes to the basics, money can make you happier because when you don't have the basics and you're in survival, it's detrimental to your happiness. But after the basics, it's all over the board. Money isn't necessarily capable of being responsible for your happiness. Invest first in yourself so you can make more money. That's the first process. The second is before you try to scrimp, save, or sacrifice, or even budget, let's plug your financial leak. Let's save money on taxes, on interest, on non performing investment fees, or on insurance costs that could be removed. Let's remove those. I know some people are just listening on audio, but for those that are seeing this on video, I just got this on my hands yesterday at the time that we're recording this. This is my children's book that comes out in January. It's called I Am Money, I Don't Grow on Trees. It's beautiful. It's like a piece of art. I'm dedicated to planting a seed of hope, connection, and expression in the hearts of 1 billion people before I die, using entertainment as a gateway to transformation and help people restore love to their life and heal their relationship with money. So I've written 9 other books. My other book, Money Unmasked, just came out, doing pretty well out the gate. So excited about that. Like first, we're almost 2 months in. It'll be 2 months in December by probably the time this is live. We sold like 8,200 copies so far, so that's kind of exciting. But yeah, I love to write. I fell in love with it. I was scared to write when I started. I wrote Killing Sacred Cows, but I was in my early 20s when I wrote it. I can't believe I knew what I knew. I've just had an insatiable curiosity, asked a lot of questions. But here I am still writing more and enjoying that process because I think that money is an intimidating topic for a lot of people and a boring topic for a lot of people, but critically important. So I've been dedicating myself to the craft of like, how do I make it more accessible, more enjoyable, and more memorable so that people can really take actionable steps to improve their life. So I built and sold an Inc. 500 financial firm. Just sold it in 2021, filmed the comedy special. I'm kind of like, I went to Italy years ago and it became like a renaissance afterwards. I like came back, got my whiskey somm. I, learned how to make a good latte and pour over coffee and started to fly fish a little bit because I just feel like wealth is a byproduct of a life well lived. So how can I live life really well? How can I enjoy it along the way and kind of master the art of living and blend and blur those lines between work and play, which isn't always easy. Like I've been going through a couple months where I'm just trying to figure that out a little bit more because I have had a lot of opportunity and I've had certain separation from old businesses. So it's a journey and I don't have it all figured out, but I like to talk about it along the way. Money Unmasked, I know it's my most recent book, but it's the book that delves into that by far more than the other ones. The second one, though, would be Disrupting Sacred Cows, because I really go into like childhood and what happens in our childhood and how that shapes our kind of our money memory. And then like I have 3 pages of resources at the end that are like, hey, these are the things I'm not an expert in, but help us deal with those childhood things. People have had really good progress on that. But Money Unmasked gets into your money persona. There's 4 different personas. There's a shadow side and a winning side. It can really show us our footprints of what leads to failure or what leads to more abundance and prosperity. And so that it can be a lot more predictable and then we can avoid some of the missteps and mistakes and also understand the dynamic of other money personas that we're in relationship with, whether that's a spouse or a business partner or whoever it is, that really informs us how they go about making their choices. Yeah, and I still am cultivating some. Like I just realized recently, like one of my early memories of money was when it was really tough because my dad worked for coal mines, and when the unions would go on strike, all of a sudden they're like doing everything they can to make ends meet. If I make enough money, my family won't have to suffer. I really feel like there's a design in society to intentionally create this gap where we're yearning to earn more, and we get in that hustle and grind, and we think that if we just have more, we'll be happier. And they get us convinced that it's the awards, the accolades, and the future, and the goals, and the revenue, and we just sacrifice our whole life for that. And then we get there, and it feels hollow because if you get there alone, you lost. If you lose your health and get there, you lost. If you destroy all your meaningful relationships, or you have to repair them, that's something that could take 10 times longer than it ever took to make the money in the first place. It's just so much of fake book and all this kind of stuff where people are just putting this lifestyle up there that's not real. And by the way, I just think that it's human nature to compare our worst to someone's best. And by the way, they're false best. They're presented best. Part of what attracts me to people is when they're more vulnerable, when they're willing to share their scars, when they're willing to talk about their lessons, when they're not acting like they just had it all figured out all the time forever, and at the same time celebrate the victories and celebrate their wins and understand that they do achieve great things. And that's a great thing to cheer on because it shows possibility. It's listed as the number 1 reason for divorce. I think what happens is when we have money troubles, we stop dreaming about a better future and we think our past was better because that turmoil kind of stifles all vision. And if all of a sudden everything's about we've lost energy, we're frustrated, we're feeling scarce, a lot of people have a hard time accepting responsibility and taking a better step. So they start start blaming their spouse. They start projecting upon them. Like I know in 2008 when the market went down, I had a lot of real estate. Like that really triggered me being like, am I valuable of being loved? Like, cause I saw so much of my identity and I had growth for 10 consecutive years, Inc. 500, New York Times, financial author. And it's like, oh, I'm more fragile than I thought. I'm exposed because I'm over leveraged. And it really was psychologically tough for me to be like, all right, well, who am I now that I'm not in growth mode for 10 straight years? I was really naive. Like I remember I got interviewed for this magazine and they put me on the cover. I was on the salt flats with my Bentley trying to look all cool and they are like, well, what do you want? What's next for you? I'm like, oh, I've made so much money, I could never spend it. It's just, what can I do to pay it forward? And then for the next 2 years, I just watched all that money just go down the drain to banks and institutions, to equity just being demolished because I didn't know my investor DNA. I was trying to just hit goals without knowing, like, who am I? What do I really want? What's my winning game? What am I going to do? What am I not going to do? Everything was just kind of about more. And more is a seductive temptress that can move us away from who we are in pursuit of something that we can never achieve. And in that pursuit, we lose because it's never enough. And that's a tough, insatiable appetite to come to terms with. Like, I want to have these things that don't even seem like they could be possible together, like growth and contentment. What about having both? What about being content with who I am, but also still growing over time, learning my lessons, impacting more people, but at the same time taking some time off, enjoying life along the way? It's not an either or, but a lot of times it's designed to make us think that it is. Like, it's not congruent, so you're battling uphill versus finding that effortless low, which is what your investor DNA is. The first thing with investor DNA is I think that we have to give up this notion of being completely passive investors, where we're portfolio investors that just hand our money over and hope for the best because they're smarter than us. And instead look at, like, what if we pick one of the big three? Intellectual property. That's my main investment. I like to write books. I like to create courses. I like to, create keynotes. Intellectual property is the game that I love. Real estate, but real estate that you could touch. Like, not just some REIT that you just have no idea what's going on with it, right? Or businesses. Like, maybe you pick one of those lanes, maybe you eventually do all three, but those are the big three to really advance. You just have to figure out what your investor DNA is. See, I don't love the real estate that I used to do, where I was just buying apartment complexes or, duplexes, fourplexes that I never really went to. I was just giving my money. I was talking to bankers. I was talking to property managers. Now I'm like, I have property I could drive to that I could rent out to my businesses, and I don't have to go outside of those businesses because podcast studio's there. It's where I do my one-on-one cash cabin immersions, or I build a music studio. And I know these are places where there's nothing for sale. It's a very valuable area that I personally know. But the hard thing for me was to try not to own everything, because the old me was like, I just should do more. I should own more properties. I own 109. That's not enough. Someone else owns 110 or 200. And so I didn't really have a plan other than more. And so now it's like, part of my framework is, does it improve my quality of life? And when I have an investment, I go, how much of that can enhance my quality of life today? How much of that can enhance my skill sets because I invest back into me? And how much of it can enhance my cash flow? And I start breaking it into those three categories of the big three: intellectual property, real estate, and businesses. And then investing in myself, which is skill sets, investing in my quality of life, which is my overall energy and enjoyment, and then investing in my cash flow. And so it's a different type of portfolio. I don't accumulate. Accumulation says wait for 30 years and then you can live off your interest. I want to accelerate, which says focus on cash flow, and velocity, which is how do I get my money to turn more than once, and how do I get that to create economic independence. I don't go for retirement because I want to build a life I don't ever want to retire from. So economic independence replaces retirement, because now when I have my assets kicking off enough cash flow, I can swing for the fences in everything I do, knowing that my foundation is handled. And at the center of this is investor DNA, not diversification. Most people are sold diversification, which is a great strategy if you're already wealthy. It's how you might preserve your wealth. But on the ride to wealth, diversification is diversification, because you spread yourself thin, you slow it down, and you're not related to the outcome of that investment. We only diversify prematurely when we rely on other people to make our investments for us and not ourselves. And part of it, we've just been lied to and we bought into the lie. I'm not smart enough. I don't have enough time. I've just got to trust the experts. Our salespeople handing it off to someone they've never met. So we're further removed from the outcome. And this is where a lot of risk comes from. Invest first in yourself so you can make more money. That's the first process. The second is, before you try to scrimp, save, save or sacrifice or even budget, let's plug your financial leak. Let's save money on taxes, on interest, on non-performing investment fees, or on insurance costs that could be removed. Let's remove those for efficiency. So make more, then keep more, then learn how to grow your money. Growing your money is a little bit more involved than people really want to believe, and it's a little bit more complicated if you get involved in too many things, because you can never be an expert at that number of things and still have a quality of life. Pick a lane and focus. And then you make sure to do risk management and risk mitigation so that you're not overextended. Like building your foundation makes a difference. Creating sustainable structures like asset protection and liability and transferring risk is important. And then you just really pay attention to the eggs in your basket versus having too many eggs that you don't even know what they are. Different than what most people are taught in the common world of investing, but it's not different than what the wealthiest people do. It's actually what they do. They only start diversifying when they've really hit home runs and have good cash flow streams, and they can have it managed because they have the right CEO, CFO, or something like that before they go to the next realm of deals, right? And I'm talking about skill sets like communication, marketing, sales, retention. Those are the skills that a lot of people neglect. Like I'm kind of like refining myself in that area because I got really good having this marketing team at my last firm that they knew how to run ads and they knew how to build. Like I became less and less involved, which means I'm not as sharp. I haven't been to the gym of marketing as much lately. I haven't done sales. I had a sales team. So it's always about like, how do I continue to add value? Like those skills make such a big difference. A lot of people focus on improving a skill that doesn't move the needle. It's something that they enjoy, and that's fine. Like, go ahead, but be careful to differentiate skill and hobby. I very much encourage hobbies, but investing in that hobby might not move the needle to adding value and improving your financial life. It might just be something that you enjoy, which I would say go all in on, but just differentiate that that's a quality of life thing, not a skill set thing. I think it's just not spoken very often, but it's kind of this context or subcontext that's usually in the back of people's minds. And the more we can start to love and accept ourselves, I think the more we can become creative, the more we can become happy, the more capacity we have to love others, the more we have capacity to have energy and connect with others. I work with like a couple, right? Like meaning a husband and a wife or wife and whatever it is. And in those situations, I want to at least be able to save them 7 figures. So, because I'm only doing like 24 of these a year. And we go up to my cabin. It's called Cash Cabin. We use this 4-part framework. Where can we save them with the IRS, with interest, with non-performing investment fees, or restructuring insurances? So we're finding money first. Then it's about those 3 categories that I shared with: quality of life, skill set, and then cash flow. And then what we're looking at is, if we dive deep, what is it that's underneath that they've never shared, that if I can ask them the right question, they can get to the answer they've never had? And that's really everything from their money blueprints, their money personas, their money stories, and getting on the same page there, because then it can accelerate results. Then we look for like their flow, and then we look for like their 5 objectives. And what's really critical is, for 25 years, I've been in the world of building relationships, so I can bring 4, 5, 6, 7 relationships that help them get everything done that we talked about that day. Because there's a lot of what people will share. Like it's their story that they share publicly, right? And a lot of it is part of the story. So I'm trying to create this really safe space, and I open up with vulnerability first. And if we can get to that trust, then we get to this place I call intimacy, where they're sharing things they've never shared before. So it's stuff that they wouldn't share, but now that they will, we can really start to heal it. We can really start to resolve it. And then finally, what's the stuff they couldn't share because it was a blind spot? And when we can really get there, then they feel so much more powerful, because they leave with clarity, confidence, and peace of mind, and they know precisely what their life's about, and they've created their winning game. So it's fun for me because it's a little bit different every time. So like what'll happen is, most of the time I pick someone up from the airport and they don't expect it, because it's not something we say. And the whole time I'm just driving with them, and they don't feel like the thing has started. They just feel like we're hanging out. But then they leave all these clues about what's really important in their life in the stories that they tell. So someone might be like, yeah, I'm going through this thing. I'm worried that like, could I end up in a lawsuit over it? And I'm like, oh, I got sued, went to court, surprising, didn't think it would go that far. So I talked about what that process was like. I was found not guilty, but I still spent 3 days, right? The stress. And then I talked about what I learned on the other side of that. So all of a sudden we're opening up about this, and then they start to feel a little bit less pressure, because they're like, oh, okay, so that's what it's really like versus what they imagine. Or talk about in 2008, man, my marriage was not in a great place. I was over leveraged with real estate. That real estate was going down. I was just trying to keep things together, which meant I was emotionally unavailable. We had 2 young kids. My oldest son was going through some auditory processing issues, and we had to get him in social groups. My wife felt really alone, and it was like a very tough 2 years that we came out the other side in a beautiful way, but it took work and it was emotional. So the mistakes I made in the sale of my business, like I'm really willing to open up about those things and dive deep into that. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, wait, I'm a human too, not just an author. And it starts to have them start to open up and share things with me that they haven't shared before. And the thing is, they just know it's still trapped there. I'm not ever going to talk about what they're talking about. They might choose to put it on video and that's fine, but it's not going anywhere. I'm only going to share my side. Once that happens, we really get to a place of like connection. And that's what happens when there's a breakthrough. If there's an intimacy and a breakthrough happens simply because people can process something, then there's just like this deep connection. And what I love about it is I'm pretty much friends with everyone that's ever done an immersion. Like we still text, we might hang out if I'm in their city. Like if they're in town here, we're going to go do something. Like I did an immersion in September. We got done. I'm like, you want to go to this party? We went to the party. I ended up bringing him to stay at my house. We'd never done that with an immersion. We worked out the next day. He ordered a cold plunge afterwards. He ordered a sauna. He ordered a X3 or Harambe. So he had band. Like I was just like, I'm just letting people into the whole version of who I am because I like that connection. And so, yeah, I mean, who knows? I write half of my blogs from those immersions, like because I end up sharing a story about myself. I'm like, yeah, I've never put that out there publicly, but I like it. It's kind of how the content comes up. I mean, where I'm really using the edutainment is I Am Money because it's a kid's book. This book, I Am Money, is like earning, saving, spending, and giving. But it says when it comes to the basics, money can make you happier because when you don't have the basics and you're in survival, it's detrimental to your happiness. But after the basics, it's all over the board. Money isn't necessarily capable of being responsible for your happiness. It's a companion and a support, but it's never a solo artist. So it's really saying you're your best asset. Why don't you invest in skill sets? You might learn to sing, or you might set up a lemonade stand. It's got some of those basic things like that. But it says when you get to a place of abundance, you could do the coolest thing. You could freely share. Meaning you're no longer just in your own isolated world. And so I think, and my co-author, she's sold so many books. She's written 100-some children's books. And I mean, we're just getting some pretty amazing early reviews on this for sure. And so I'm totally excited about it because money is the character. My dad used to say that we had a money tree and then eventually said money doesn't grow on trees. And so it's called I Am Money and I don't grow on trees. So I know people can pre-order it from Barnes & Noble right now if they really want to. The reviews of like my friends reading it to their kids and filming it's pretty special. Like this is a great conversation that when it's had early, I think, dude, here's the deal. Parents are going to learn from reading this. They're going to learn and they don't have to admit they didn't know it. But it's so simple yet so profound and has 10 money tips at the back, which I think are really cool too. I mean, my parents were really loving, but you know, they did everything they can to avoid poverty, but got stuck in scarcity because it's like, hey, you never know when the mines could go on strike. And so I was a miser growing up, like, you know, didn't ever want to spend money, wanted to, you know, coupon clip if that's what it took, or, you know, like it was all about not valuing my time enough and not valuing myself enough because it was all about saving, scrimping, sacrificing, budgeting, those kind of things. So the good news is I wasn't ever reckless with money. I never overspend, or as I was investing later on in life, I got a little over leveraged, but it wasn't because I was living beyond my means. It was because I was investing too quickly and taking too much risk, which was a different lesson I had to learn because that part of that was railing against this notion of like my family had cash in coffee cans that was buried in the cellar. So that's not necessarily a good money management methodology. So I started to explore and learn these other things without a lot of guidance. I had to kind of figure it out and make some mistakes along the way. And I had to heal from the notion of like scarcity. I grew up, and if you had a half drink, if you only drank half your drink and then left it, they'd be like, hey, who did this? Or hey, it was like my son teasing me. He's like, I could be having an existential crisis and you want to know who left the lights on downstairs. So I do have some of that, but that's only in the worst of times now. I've healed from so much of that I no longer look at that because it's so limited. No one shrinks their way to wealth. Value creation is the game, and value creation is about serving others and solving problems, and it's an expansive game. So the more people we serve, the more value create, the more money we're going to have. So sure, for someone who's lost, maybe saving some money by coupon clipping or buying on Black Friday makes a difference. But for someone who knows their value and is bringing that value to the world, their time is probably worth too much than spending 10 hours to save $100. It becomes, as you recognize and elevate your value, it's more about how many people you could serve and how deeply you can impact the people you serve, not about in an isolated vacuum how much you could save. I did a lot of things. I did, somatic method with MDMA. I did some psilocybin, and I really feel like that was super helpful as well. But I had joined Strategic Coach when I was young. I did Landmark when I was really young. I just was aggressive at getting educated and being around really intelligent people. I remember talking to people that were further ahead than me, confronting me about my scarcity mindset and my viewpoints. And it really made a difference. Like this one woman just was talking to me and she's like, I wonder what it's like to live in the financial prison you built for your wife. But I didn't see it. It was a blind spot. I was just following my family's way of handling things. And then all of a sudden I overcame that. And even that first year I was married, I did so many stupid things to save money. And my wife loves to tell the stories to my kids because they think that it's hysterical. They laugh about it. But then one day my youngest is like, why was dad like that? And my wife was like, oh, he was just doing the best he knew how to help our family. He thought it was a way to keep our family safe. And and that's the thing is we learn our lessons, we get different perspectives, but I always like to look at very abundant people and ask them questions and be around them. When I wanted to improve my marriage, I said, who are the 3 couples that have the best marriage that are older than us? And we went and really invested time with them. Right now I'm investigating outside of my hometown where I live right now, who are the 5 relationships I want to invest the most time with next year, because they change my thinking, they expand my thinking, they challenge my thinking, and they're ahead of where I'm at financially because I'm spending a lot of time with people that I'm the one that's been ahead financially. So like I want to get to that outer edge where I'm challenged, where I'm expansive, and where I'm looking at things in a different way. And that's what's been nice about traveling around speaking recently with my book. I've just been attending a lot of the places I'm speaking and learning a lot. Like I just went to Taki Moore's event and I learned a ton in the 2 days I was there, and I went to Dan Martell's event and I learned a ton at the 2 days I was there. And so it's like really cool to be around these people and be like, cool, I spoke, but now I'm listening to these other people who have expertise in other areas, and I'm like, I want to continue to be a lifelong learner. And I think sometimes when people at a level of success, they're so busy showing how great they are. Like when I'm insecure, I might try to overdo the talking in a conversation. I might try to show everything I'm up to, which could seem like I'm not creating enough space for the other person, but that's when I'm insecure. And I feel like arrogance is when we want other people to love us more than we love ourselves, and it becomes kind of a repelling. And so I've just got to the point where I'm like, I don't have to let everybody know everything I know. It's okay for me to just learn from them and listen to them too. And that's going to give me access. Now I'm willing to give all that I can, but I'm also willing to write that on a blog or put that in a book, or, it doesn't have to be me impressing someone in the moment. It could just be me connecting with someone and learning from them as well. In my teens, it was like, I just wanted to see dollars in a bank account. Like I just wanted to become a millionaire in my teenage years. Like $1 million, it didn't matter if it was in savings. I just wanted to look at it in a bank. And then my 20s, it was like, oh, I got to be a multi-millionaire, and I got to have more employees than other people so I could brag about my employees. And I got to have bigger revenue so I could tell people how impressive my revenue is. I got to have this beautiful building that's winning architectural awards because I have to demonstrate. Not only can I tell them, I got to show them, and I got to drive. Like a lot of it was materialistic in my 20s, from the office that we did have that was beautiful to the Bentley that I did drive. And it's fine if people want to drive nice cars. I like my truck better than any other vehicle. It's other people love those fast cars, and great. Find out what your value-based spending is. Don't just buy it because it's impressive to someone else. Buy it because it's fulfilling to you. Yeah, that was totally the motivation. I wanted you to think I was a badass. 100%. The 2008 thing was the thing that switched for me. And because I was like, I was out on a limb. I was so much of my time was grinding and always working and always doing something and never present. And I was gaining weight, and I was like, this isn't a good life. So I was like, what's it going to look like moving forward? My 30s became this like intellectual property revolution. In my 30s, it was about, I'm creating books. And I still was a little bit in the grind at times, but like I did a really good job at like learning and teaching and capturing that, which was a lot more fun. In my 40s, I'm like really navigating like, how do I just love life? And it's been a little bit messy because being a comedian, I don't just go small. I had 8 Emmy winners on the crew for my comedy special. I dropped a ton of money filming that thing and getting it out there, and didn't raise funds for it. And like if you look at my books like Money Unmasked, like I invest a ton of money in the aesthetic of it and the experience of it. So I've become more of an artist, and as many artists, they start to overdo the art and not the finance. And so it's nice because I have a financial background, so I tend to balance that out a whole lot quicker. And I just spent a ton of money in 2021 and 2022 as this new expansion as an artist. And how do I make sure that impacts the world, and how do I make sure I monetize that properly? And I've been able to reel it back in. But yeah, this foray on doing a theatrical keynote, on writing a kid's book, on doing the comedy special. That comedy special is probably the coolest 5 months of my life, from the time I chose to do it, started writing it, rehearsing it on a daily basis, and then filming it. Like, it's one of those things that my kids got to watch it. They got to see me struggle. They got to see me overcome my insecurities. We just signed a contract last week with a distributor, so it's been one hell of a journey. Hey, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. And if you're enjoying these videos, well, there's good news. More where that came from, so go ahead and click through and watch the next video now.